the amount of people that actually tithe
It's small.
is minuscule, in the church, and that when people do tithe, they see it as doing something extra rather than as doing what you're supposed to.
Ground zero.
The law of the first.
That it's, I tithe. No, it's you're supposed to tithe.
Right.
Like you're not going above and beyond when you tithe. That's what offerings are. Tithing is, it's scriptural. It's what we're supposed to do.
It's bare minimum.
It's bare minimum. And a lot of people kind of get that conflated, and they look at it as, they're going above and beyond by tithing, and it's the wrong perspective. And that used to be me,
That used to be me too.
It took me a long time to really understand the heart behind tithing,
Well, I think especially as a new believer in the church, and that's when I struggled with it the most. And I could actually get into a long story about it because God worked on me in a big way in that. But when I first started going in my 30s, where I first got saved, I'm like, it's mine. Why do I viewed as what I was giving was to the church. It wasn't for the expansion of the kingdom in this place.
Mm-hmm.
So why do they need my money? And that was the other part of the view where I was wrong. Why do they need my money? And I was just listening to a scripture one day on Cain and Abel, and it just struck me in the simplest way of what was an acceptable gift to God, right? And this is the basis of a tithe, and this is the basis of first fruits and the basis of everything. But, Cain gets jealous. Cain's firstborn, chosen son of God, or son of the man, and he's got the rights to everything. He's taking care of the fields, and Abel's taking care of the flock, right? Abel gives a gift to God, which is his very best goat, the first, the best, without question, just gifts that to God. Cain comes in, gives his gift. It was out of his abundance of crops that he had. And it wasn't his first, it was after he had gathered the abundance. And it painted that picture for me first to see, wow, like the first thing I do is give to God. Then the rest of it's my paycheck. Mm-hmm. So it almost set it up in a way, like when I even moved to Texas, that's probably where it first started hitting me. Where we set up online tithing, online pay, and stuff like that. You guys are laughing at me?
No. I'm turning his breathing down.
Yeah, I'm not breathing.
I'm out of the loop on that one too. I was like, what just happened?
I'm holding my breath.
But
You're good.
no, it went to like the church started offering online tithing. So without thinking of it, I was like, all right, what's 10%? And it comes out every week, and I don't think about it. And I looked at that as that was almost like Abel's offering. It was like the first, he didn't think about it. It came out without him knowing, and then the rest was out of what he had.
So I've struggled with the thought of it coming out without knowing, because I think that you lose some of the point of tithing that first 10% when you don't even have to see it. You don't have to do anything. Now, don't get me wrong. Mine does come out that way.
It's very convenient.
It's very convenient, but I've struggled with the mentality part of I don't see it. I don't know it's coming out. Therefore, I'm not as affected by it, where it's different when they had checks, when you wrote that check out for an amount and you put it in, right? The tithing has become so easy now. Now, don't get me wrong. We still do the online payment and everything,
For convenience.
Yeah.
But I agree with you to a point, because physical action creates the act of physical pain. Like it's coming out, it hurts in some way, you're actually going above and beyond to do something. But if it comes out even and it's your 10% and it's your tithe, like it's not yours. You don't think about
Right.
it. That's where I'll disagree there in a little bit, but you feel it at times when things are tight. Your kid's going to college, you get 2 flat tires on your wife's van, you get 2 flat tires on your son's truck, and then you need a new car, and you're like, oh man, I give that much a month. That's a car payment. That's something I could, man, should I retract that?
I don't even end up.
But I don't think about those things now. But
like, I really don't.
Wish I had a car that was that payment.
No, I don't.
well, that's yeah. Nowadays, yeah. Come on,
I
man.
feel like I used
No,
to
I mean,
get
it's
there,
a
but
lot.
before we continue, hey, if you're jumping in with us, yes, we're going to talk about money today. We want to welcome you to Close Cover Podcast. We've already kind of jumped in, but we want you to know that we don't take you for granted. We're glad that you jumped in with us, that you've tuned in with us. My name is Jason. We got John and Jeff.
Hopefully at this point you know who we are.
If you don't know who we are, we don't normally sit here because somebody wanted to be silly. So we're in different seats.
Musical cheers.
You
Good to
said
get your
we
good
want
side.
to be different. You just said it.
It does
You got
kind of
your
look
way.
better.
So
Different is
today
better.
we're talking about finances. What does the Bible say? How can we trust God when money has become so important? Money's become the thing that runs everything. And so we're going to jump back into our discussion. Man, you got any questions, comments? You got something you want to say? Put it down there. We do read them. We notice them. So I think it was the Carpenter's Apprentice who commented on our last one. I'll try and not breathe so
Hold your
much ever. But apparently it was like, and I heard it too. It was like, like Darth Vader's over there.
It was Darth Vader.
But we also have the Podfather back on the controls, but we appreciate him for joining in with us last week. And so it should be under control a little better. So jumping back in, we
Where
are
were
in.
we?
We're in the
I don't
middle
know.
of
Jason
the
scared me whenever he pointed us.
the convenience of the automatic kind of tithe button, and
I think there are pros and cons.
I agree.
You know, I think that
agree.
it separates that physical writing the check and feeling that money leaving, but I think that it makes it easier for more people to be able to tithe.
Yeah.
Which I think is a benefit. As long as you can still stay focused and know why you're doing that, and like the point that you brought, that it's the first thing out of that check. It's not, I pay my bills and I've got this much left over, so this is what I'm going to tithe. It's
Yeah.
I know I have bills and I know that God's going to take care of me. I'm going to tithe my 10%, and then I'm going to take care of bills and life and everything else. And He's going to provide for you.
Yeah.
I've experienced that I don't know how many times. And then it comes to like your offerings part of it. Like when you have a windfall, or whenever you come across money, or
on the road, like in a bag.
with a dollar sign on it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Thank
it
you,
when that happens.
Jesus.
90% for me, 10% for
Not the permission to go gambling today.
No, you gotta offer some of that.
But so on the offering part of it, Casey and I have had a tendency to, because we do tithe to the church, like anytime that we get something that's an offering, like I try and direct it, or we try and direct it towards another resource other than the church. Like missions, or if someone's in need, or like I think I told the example one time, friends of ours had left our old church to open a church and we had a windfall, sent them the check, and had no clue, went to their second service, and they pull us to the side, and they're like, dude, you don't understand. Like, we had a vital piece of equipment that broke. We would not have been able to have our first, why am I drawing a blank?
Service.
Wouldn't have been able to have our first service.
Welcome back.
And that check was the exact amount,
That's
so
crazy.
There's no doubt that God knows what he's doing and that his timing is perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mentioned the story of my son's truck, and then how, there was a price I gave him to purchase the truck from me to get ready to go to college. Then he gets in an accident, 3 weeks later, and it was the exact amount to fix the truck as I asked him to give me for that. And he doesn't listen to this podcast, so I could actually say it. And when he paid me for the truck, as a dad would, I was so elated that he worked hard enough to earn that money to pay me, that in the same moment I gave it back to him and explained what it meant. But God was like, he didn't know what it meant, so I had to teach him. It was the exact amount he put back in my hand. And it is those stories like that. And it taught him a lesson too, though, of the power of what it is to give God first. And that's the thing I struggled with 10 years ago, because I've only probably been tithing for 10 years of my life. And 10 years ago, I was like, why does the church need my money? Why does anybody need? It was my money, right? And it was another sermon I was listening to outside of the story of Cain and Abel that I was talking about first. That was talking about, we were at my wife's church in a Methodist church in the middle of Illinois, and they were talking about farming. It's a big farming community. It is still a big farming community. And they were talking about the farmers storing their crops. And they would always store the first 10% of their crop in one grain bin and sell that off and give that to the church. It was their first donation. And then they'd sell off the rest of their crop, and that would be their work through the winter. Because they were getting paid once a year, and they'd have to channel those funds from what they sold off in their farm crops at that point in the year when harvest came in. So the first 10% of their harvest. So I look at the online giving almost like my first 10% of my crop. And I don't think about it because it goes in that grain bin. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And it's anytime I get a raise, anytime I get something like that, it's like, okay, let's adjust the grain bin. We got to build it out, make it bigger. And you see, like, just the whole gift of giving, like where you can start giving. Like, we had our kids pick mission kids. Each one was their age at a point when they were younger, to give like that $35 a month. And you just see the fruit that comes from that. And it's different. It is different. It's so different. And you finally, it clicks and you understand it. It's so simplistic that you're like, why would I want to do this? I own my car. I own my house. But it also puts in perspective the things that you have, right? In a lot of ways, like, where we talk about all these worldly things that matter to us. Like, yeah, I used to want the nice car and all the things. Now I buy beaters and I learn how to fix them and I have fun with it and I do a bunch of dumb things, but it's because things don't matter like they used to, in a way. And tithing has taught me that. And it isn't the responsibility portion is gone a different direction. It's just the fact of my mindset has changed because I died to that old self in that. I don't know, but
no, I absolutely understand. I do like the idea of like very consciously trying to pay attention, because I mean, even in doing like some of the automatic stuff, and I've done it, both ways, several ways, when checks existed, those kind of things. And what I found at one point, kind of with the automatic thing, was it almost became like a bill. You know what I mean? Oh, the tithes coming out. And it was like, oh, the phone's coming out. Oh, the insurance is coming out. And for me, it didn't hold the same weight. And it started to have that, it's a bill that I have to pay. And that just, over time, it didn't sit very well for me.
Yeah.
Because, the Bible talks about to bring your tithes, to bring your first fruits. And
Right.
so I didn't feel like I was bringing. I felt like I was just signed up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, you can do the automatic thing as long as
It's mindset. It's perception.
You're consciously go, okay, I know where this is going. I know what this is. Yeah. It's not, and not let it fall kind of into that bill mentality, so to speak. But so I think it's really interesting. But even from there, it's like, and I think we've talked about it a little bit where, man, this year has been nuts work-wise for me, all this kind of stuff. And I feel like a big part of it was God going, look, am I your source of everything? Or just this thing or just that thing or whatever? And it's like, oh, wow. And so even I kind of put it together like, I'm looking for a job at one point and different jobs come up or you're whatever job seekers, those kind of things. And it's like, oh yeah. And then you look and of course you're looking at salary and what they pay and this and that. And it's like my brain would automatically go, oh, that'll fix everything. And God just kept saying, no, it won't. Because you'll end up in the same place again where you're looking at this to save you, and I'm the only one who saves you. And even as far as, it's like, honestly, 100% of the money is His.
Right.
Because He gave me 100% of my life, 100% of my ability to work for a living, right. 100% of my job, because I couldn't. It's not like I can't get it on my own, but I know that God gave it to me. So it's like, I mean, the idea that it's all His anyway.
Right.
Like everything, it's all His. And if I'm in a place of where Pastor Sean was actually talking about it at prayer, where like that lordship goes to everything I have, including all of me, belongs to you, then, and he's like, so out of your finances, because it's all mine anyway, this is 10%. 10%. Oh, okay. And it just like, it's been this progression, and I like definitely had the same struggles when we're scrapping to get by.
Right.
Going, you want me to send money? And I still knew that it was the right thing.
Right.
But I'm like, how in the world am I supposed to pay for stuff? How in the world am I like, not stuff like fancy stuff? I got, kids, and my kids were small, and it's like I gotta feed them, and we gotta buy diapers, and like all these things, and
that's where it's crazy, because I'll look at that like, I have a different perception and perspective on it coming out automatically, but the last thing I'll ever adjust is that down. I'll adjust up when I can, or something has happened with work, but adjusting down is a non-negotiable based on, because my salary hasn't changed, but inflation has. Cost of goods sold has. I mean, groceries are triple what they used to be 3-4 years ago. And for whoever says they aren't, you could go check. They are. But at the same time, the last thing I'm taking from is that. And people look at that and they're like, well, the first thing I'm going to take from is that, because that's extra. And it's a perspective change. Like, for some odd reason, the kids turn 16 and 17 and 18. They're making money and they're buying some of the old goodies you used to purchase for them on their own. So it's freeing up space for you to get the things, and God makes a way. And it's just having that mindset, right? And it's like, non-negotiable. This is God.
Exactly, that's the word. And
That's it.
I think because it's tied to command.
Yeah.
And it's like, you really wouldn't throw out, I don't think most people would, any of the 10 Commandments maybe. It's like, that one doesn't count. But when it comes to money, well, and it's like it begins a
That one's
negotiation.
no.
I'm giving them 10% of every other time that maybe I make, like, and it's like, no. It doesn't work that way.
My taxes were this year, so I only actually earned this. And
Well, and
It's like-
and the church.
I've been in
Now
those
there's-
rooms.
the
I've been in
church-
That's
those
a big
rooms,
argument.
man.
Do you pay 10% pre-tax or do you pay 10% after tax?
It's gross.
gross income.
It's gross.
So that's a big argument.
Yeah.
Like
It's-
a lot of
it's
people
gross.
hate when that topic gets brought up. And like,
Yeah.
well, hold on.
Yeah.
Like I'm netting this much and I'm going to give 10% of that.
Yeah.
And then you've got what you gross.
Nobody cares what the government,
government
took.
might want to take
Uh,
his 30%, but that's
this is the amount of money that you made, whatever the government did, and it's 10% of your income.
yeah.
Well, I was figuring it on a sliding scale. Well, shut
And if
up.
I give that this year, we're not able to go on that vacation. Well,
You would be surprised.
God
Like,
might
I heard-
bless you with that vacation if you just give up on yourself.
And I think there's two
That's it.
things that, because there's some in the church, not our church, thank the good Lord, but in religion that have ruined giving and tithing and sowing into things financially,
I could get into that.
because it's become
I'll go into the perspective I used to have. So when I was first saved and like gave my life to Jesus, I was at a church that basically, and this is where that whole Catholic Come Home campaign started, like all that's like Catholics Come Home, all these different things with different religions. And I was at a church that was basically having meetings about how much debt they were falling into and prying it into the community of not giving, because 20% of the church was giving above $20 a week or something like that, and they break down the dollar percentages based on the people that were there. That church went from 500 people down to 110 before I left. There's other reasons for that too. The Lutheran religion, the acceptance of the ELCA, the non-scriptural things that fed into the building that made it different. And the people, they basically were calling out people in almost after school meetings saying, hey, you need to give more because we're failing as a church because you're not giving enough. And I was like, what? That's when I had that perspective of, they just want my money. Why would I go to church like that? Because they just want my money. That's it.
Now, do you think that
But that's
there should
before I
be-
knew it wasn't my money either, but still.
Here, I'll throw
Oh,
gas on the
I want
fire.
to see if our brains are connected, because my brain took off.
Go.
So, do you think that there should be a line drawn on? So, if you have, first question, do you think it should be tracked who gives and who doesn't?
For tax purposes?
No.
I mean, it has to be, but at
No,
the same
I'm talking,
time,
do you think the church should know who are the givers and who aren't? Do you think there should be a name tied to it?
no, you're supposed to give
Okay,
without.
so do you, let me ask you
To
this.
some degree, yes.
Okay, so do you think
That's where I'm
that people that are, because this is a commandment from God saying you shall tithe the first 10%. So
but
if
do
they
not
are
brag or do not boast about what you
there's
give.
no
either.
bragging about it. Hear me out. So if you're not following what God is telling you to do, do you think that there are certain things that you should and should not be allowed to do in the church or be a part of if you are not fulfilling what it is that God has asked you to do?
And that's a loaded question for sure,
Yes.
and something that I need to think through. But so we're gonna deny people access.
I don't not
No.
access to the church, but so let me kind of paint the picture a little different, because I know where he's at.
Because I started somewhere,
No,
and I was
we all
not
do.
given.
granted,
we all
we
do.
all start somewhere,
Right.
but it would be like if you knew, again, very simple, 10 Commandments, right?
Yeah.
And you knew I was habitually abusing one of those commandments. And then somebody wants to put me in a place
call you out, yeah.
of leadership in the church.
Right.
But like, this dude always wants his neighbor's donkey. Old school.
Shall not covet.
No. Like, that there's an issue.
My mind went.
Oh, no, because I was going to go there, and then I edited for TV.
You can say it.
PG-13. Anyway, and so, but you knew,
Yeah.
right, that there's something going on with me, and like these, and I'm just picking the 10 Commandments because it's easy, right?
Right.
Or like it's an easy measuring kind of thing. And then somebody says, yeah, they're going to make Jason this or this or that, and
your access to that should not be there now. I agree with you fully there.
So, but what
but
people don't see is that some people is that the command to tithe is tied to what God says that we're supposed to do, right? And so it'd be the same thing. Like for us, we got a brother that comes in or whatever, and where does that conversation go when hey man, you tithing? God gave you an amazing job. You said thank you God for my job and everything. You tithing? Oh no, I don't believe in that. Church doesn't need my money. Where do you go? What is your?
We're obviously having the conversation today, saying, hey man, like God gave you an amazing job. You said it in the first sentence to me, and then you're not tithing or giving back for Him giving to you. How's that make sense? That's probably my response.
Yeah.
Because somebody's telling me that they obviously have a relationship with me, and you know that goes into access, like an elder, leader in a church. Any of those people, yeah, if you're not biblically sound or following standards of those 10 commandments that are given and different things, your access to those leadership positions shouldn't be given to you, because basically you're not following the guidelines.
Right.
And,
Right.
and the thing about tithing is it's a hard and fast, right? Because there are plenty of sins that people commit that I'm never going to know. Like
Right.
you could be committing sins daily that I have no knowledge about,
And I am.
but
And
you've
sometimes
got
I don't even have knowledge about it.
But you've got the
You just
hard
reflect
and
and you're
fast
like, crap.
ones. It's the same thing with. There are regulations and rules of what it takes to be a pastor, right? And you don't want somebody coming in and leading a church. We just went through this. You don't want somebody coming in and leading a church that is not meeting the standards that have already been set by God for what a pastor should be. So that trickles down, and any leadership under that staff is on a different level. Like you can, you should not be a staff member at a church if you're not tithing.
Well, and here's the thing. I agree. But when I don't necessarily agree with the fact that the church takes from your check before they pay you the check, like without you signing up for it. Some churches, so Brooke,
like that was kind of out of left field. Where'd that one come from?
So went through a job interview process with Brooke where she almost went to work at a Christian school, and their first sentence to her was, "We take the 10% out of your check before we pay you." And at that point, I'm like, it's just like we're going to force you to take a COVID shot.
That's a bill.
Yeah.
Like like you were saying earlier, that's not that's
I
not
don't
from me.
That is right. Unless somebody says to me, "Hey, could you take that out of my check, the first 10%?"
Yeah.
That you have to create that action. Like the person has to be, their heart condition.
Which is what we were talking about
earlier. Heart condition has to be right.
Absolutely.
So that came out of left field, and that's why I said it, because I did want to get your reactions on it. I mean, what you thought.
Absolutely not. But I think to answer your question with, if you have a friend, that's not tithing, like how do you approach that conversation? And I heard somebody I heard somebody explain, Like, God judges, the Holy Spirit convicts, and Jesus loved. And we are supposed to be like Jesus. So in no way, shape, or form in that conversation should you judge them, should you convict them. You should just love them and have an open conversation with them about, and it's hard, but don't go in there with a you should, you need to. It needs to be a loving conversation about, hey, let's just make sure that you understand. Like, this is what it says, and you acknowledge, because the example that you gave was, man, God bless me with this job. Man, God bless me with, this abundance. God bless me with, this raise, so you're acknowledging that God played a part in that. So you can't deny that if God plays a part in it and gives you the ability to be blessed in that manner, then you have to acknowledge that he is also giving you a commandment. Like, you can't have one without the other.
No, for sure.
It's either all or nothing.
You can't have the cake.
I agree.
Too. But it's to that point, if they didn't acknowledge that God gave me this job, and they just said, man, I got this amazing job, and like my bills just keep stacking up on all these things, and you get into the conversation and ask, are you tithing? And they're like, well, no, why would I do that? Well, the question isn't what you're waiting to do or the doors that are opening, but you might not be getting access to certain things in your life because you haven't determined how to fully surrender. Yeah. And the first step in fully surrendering is giving a portion of yourself. And a lot of people idolize money. It's probably the biggest idol that any of us could think of, outside of fame.
American ones.
Yeah. Very, very American.
American Idol.
You got it. You can start singing for us, brother.
No.
But in
Not
that,
today.
In that, it's a simplistic thing. Like, to prophesy over somebody is encouraging, right? How do you encourage somebody in that situation? Do you think you have full access to everything God has for your life if you're not fully surrendered?
No, and that's applicable across the board with a whole bunch of things.
It is.
But I think, it's even in the teaching, discipling, and educating of, trying to help people, trying to show them. And I know, like, one big thing for me, you were talking about offerings earlier, and it's like, man, there are times where it's like you feel... I'm very much like, I feel God is saying, man, you need to sow into this. It's something above and beyond my tithe, and it may be a different church, congregation, establishment. Sometimes it's my home church. Yeah, sometimes it's my home church. It's where I'm at, and it's like, hey, I feel like God is saying, do a little extra. And my biggest litmus test is, honey, what do you think? Did you hear anything? Do you feel anything in this moment? And we've gotten all the way down to what number did you hear?
Yeah.
She goes, yeah, I feel like we're supposed to do something. And then I have a number. I have a number that I feel like God told me, what number did you hear?
Yeah,
and I almost every single time the number's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, that becomes even more confirmation.
Right.
I know that God is speaking because I know my wife hears God. I know I can hear God. I know this isn't just emotional, like, we need to just give. And, like, it's not an emotionally stimulated movement. It's something that God's moving on my heart that I need to sow into whatever the thing is, right? Ministry or whatever. And my wife becomes the confirmation in a lot of those. You think you heard something? Yeah, I heard something. What number did you hear? And 9 times out of 10, it's exactly the same number.
Yeah.
And the 1 time out of 10, it's not. It's within like this percent of, like, it's 9 times out of 10, it's the exact number, and it's pretty amazing.
We're almost in another topic, though, too, is teaching people how to listen. right? And I think we should dive into that at some point, like, because people are like, how could you audibly hear God speak? And I think part of that surrender is how you get to the point of actually hearing God speak. But at the end of the day, too,
I've never audibly
no.
heard.
And I'm not saying that either. Like
Well,
God's,
I mean,
you hear him in your mind,
yeah, or you get the nudges, or you get the
signs.
like an example. So here's an example, and kind of with what you were talking about.
Sounded like a clinical problem. I got the nudges. How does that work? Well, it starts right here.
I got an itch.
There's a kidney stone.
I got these short shorts. You could hit my nudge any way you want to hit my nudge.
There's there's a overtime contract that I work, and it's been going on for a couple of months, and like my first shift is tomorrow, and they sent a message out on the group of guys and girls that work that contract. There's a security guard there that I guess has been diagnosed with some type of medical problem, and she doesn't make much money at what she does, and she's burning through her vacation and sick because of her illness, to the point that she's actually coming into work in pain when she shouldn't. And there's a female officer that works on that gig she's done this before in other situations, but she sent a text out, and she was like, hey guys, here's the situation. If you've worked the contract already, you know this girl. She's a sweetheart. She's apparently very funny too. But without going into detail, this is what she's going through. I got my next shift next week on Tuesday. Can y'all Venmo me money? I'm going to put it on a card. She was like, we make a lot of money working this contract. It's the least that we can do. I hadn't worked the shift yet, and I saw that come out. And this week, yesterday or the day before, the officer walks into my unit, and she beelines it and comes right up to me, and she was like, so have you worked on the contract yet? And I went, I knew exactly what she was about to ask. And I was like, no, I haven't. And she goes, well, I just wanted to know if you're willing to give. And like my first gut reaction was like, I haven't even met her yet. Mm-hmm. And those words came out of my mouth. Now, I didn't hear anything audibly, but it felt like I got slapped across the face. And I kind of went, oh.
Yep.
That wasn't the right reaction, and the female officer kind of gave me a look, and I went, tell me what's going on. And she explained everything to me in a little bit more detail than she was willing to put across the text. And I went, you know what? It's like, I've already got your Venmo. I was like, I'll get you money here, by the end of the day. And she just kind of smiled, like she knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
And she kind of smiled, and she goes, I figured, and just
people are good fundraisers.
Walked off, and I was like, oh, and it just, it bugged me because of my first gut reaction was like, why am I going to give somebody money that I don't even know?
Right.
And then as it weighed on me in time, like my first shift is tomorrow, and I was talking to my buddy that holds the contract, and he was like, yeah, you'll probably be working with, the security guard. And I was like, it's like, all right, that's pretty cool. He was like, hey, she's absolutely hilarious. She'll talk your ear off. She's fun to hang out with. And as I sat there, I was like, you know what this is? This is a great opportunity, because I'm going to be up there for 8 or 9 hours. And I think her shift is like 5 of that 8 or 9.
Then you're going to come home and double it, and it's going to be like, oh my goodness.
Come home and double what? I'm so confused.
Your
Venmo.
Your Venmo.
Oh, well, yeah, I may very well. But that's going to be the perfect opportunity to talk to her about, does she have a relationship with Jesus? Mm-hmm. And my understanding is she got diagnosed with cancer. So I don't know if it's a terminal form. I don't know if it's something that can be treated. I don't know any of that. But I was like, okay. And that was that non-audible, but it was like, hey, I'm providing you with an opportunity. So I'm like, okay. So I work with her in the morning. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, you definitely have to be tuned in to be able to listen and hear, when God's talking to you, or whenever the Holy Spirit is directing you. So yeah, but
Well,
I mean,
that's the funny thing is like you sit there and you go through a big portion of your life and like where I wasn't a believer, and you're hearing like you hear the voices in your mind of different things, and sometimes without even realization, like God was speaking to you, and you just were blind to it, and that's where it caught me. It was funny. I could tell a whole story, but when we made the decision to move from Illinois to Texas, we were heading to Brooke's parents' house, and I had gotten offered the job over Christmas, and we were praying beforehand. And this is like a year after I got saved, not long after, and maybe 2 years. And we're praying, and I'm like, if we're supposed to go to Texas, God will let us know. The moment I spoke the words, the next license plate was a Texas license plate. But not only was the next license plate a Texas license plate, because God's got jokes, the next 3 miles, past 10 to 15 cars, every license plate was from Texas. And then one of the license plates said FLLWGD. I mean, what? And my wife saw it. I saw it. And then there's a billboard that says follow Jesus. And then you're just like, all right.
Okay.
We went to her parents' house that evening and told them, we're going to move to Texas. And her mom looked at me and she goes, you're taking my babies away from me. I'm going to throw up. Mm. And I'm like, oh, man. But sorry, God's leading us there. And that was one of the hardest things I ever had to say to a person, because they look at you and they're like, what do you mean God's speaking to you? Mm-hmm. Right? Or what do you mean you should give your first 10%? What's this all mean? And there was a point in my life where I looked at it and I thought that was crazy talk. Like if my 18-year-old self heard me talking today, I'm like, dude, you're whack. You are a nut job.
Yeah.
But I've seen so much since that point of surrender that I can't deny it. And that's where tithing came into play. Like, I've seen so much fruit that, I mean, I grew up in a house that was riddled with debt, that people struggled their whole life. And I'm good at saying no because of what I grew up with, and I vowed never to be that way. But I also let it become an idol for me at some point. Yeah. And God's walked me through that, and he's still walking me through that. And I still fall short daily. Like, and that's where, like, people could be watching and we're saying this, and we're all going to fall short in something. Like, there's something I looked at today where I was like, oh man, that was not right. That was sin, or the reaction we had with a person. And that was just me being stupid. That's the one thing we understand as males and about ourselves too, is we're going to talk before we think sometimes, or before we discern. And we're not meek in our actions, right? Mm. And that's where it came to is, man, I used to lead with a lot of words, and we could speak a lot of words here, right? But now it's just, how do I listen? Like, it's like a transitional point in your life.
It makes it easier, that's for sure.
Right.
So that made me think of, somebody posted this the other day, but it kind of touches on both things, tithing and listening. In order to tithe, it's a condition of the heart, and you have to understand that what you're giving is not yours. Yeah. So it's not like you're giving up something that is rightfully yours. It's something that you were blessed with and given. And then the listening side of it is it takes faith, right? Because you can't see it. You have to trust. And as you give it that faith and you put that faith into it, and it starts working in your life, and you start seeing the results, that's where that faith gets stronger. And a friend of mine posted this, and it says, I think eventually you come to a point in your life where you've seen God come through so many times in so many different ways that when your plans fail, or a door closes, or a person walks away, you are completely at peace, knowing that he has never let you down, that he will never let you down, And what he has planned next will always be better than what's behind. And it took a while for me to get to that point. You know, we sing the song "God Never Fails," or "Will He Fail?" No, and it
Can't.
he can't. But I've been saved for a while, and I didn't grasp that immediately.
Yeah.
And once I did fully grasp the concept that he's not going to let me down, he's not going to let me fail, that the little bumps in the road, even the big potholes in the road, I was still at peace.
So
Like, I was comfortable with, okay, like, yeah, it's a loss, but it's a loss for a reason. Okay, yeah, you closed this door that I wanted to go through, but I know that you closed that for a reason. Or, man, that was a really good friend of mine, and I just learned that they were not what I thought they should have been, but there's a reason, and I'm at peace with that. You know, once you understand that he has a plan, and that even though it may cost you monetarily, physically, emotionally, there's a reason that he's trimming this stuff away in your life, and it's for the betterment of you, you know, in his kingdom.
To kind of like expand, because some people put like the God has a reason for everything, and they attach it to every bad thing that goes on.
Yeah.
Too. And
we're all Job.
I mean,
I get it now.
Job was very specific in what God was doing with Job, and I feel like almost like the point he was proving. Job was a very specific, I feel like, case where God said, okay, do this and do that, because he knew really Job's heart in all of it, and knew that he would be glorified at the end of those things. And for some of it, it's like, I absolutely believe that God has a plan for everything, but not everything that happens is his plan.
Agreed.
And I explain that with abusive childhoods,
right?
Yeah.
And those kind of things. And so, like, that's not God's plan.
No.
That's not God's plan for you ever. Like, oh, so here's what I'm going to do. When you're a little kid, I'm going to have you get beat up
This is a good
by your
point that you're
parents.
bringing up.
You know what I mean? And all of that stuff. And it's like, well, God had a reason. No. Somebody else chose
Right, free will.
to do that, and you suffered for it, and it was not right.
Right.
And God did not condone it or like it or plan it. But now, and that's where he can redeem, where he can use those bad things
story,
for good. But
your instance.
then that comes back to me and my response. Do I continue to let abusive childhood rule my life?
Right.
What do I do with it? Because when I release it and forgive and all of those things, it's like God goes, now I can take this thing that was bad. Now I can take it and make this for good, because you're in a place where it can be good.
Right.
Because if you just tried to make it good and my heart is still black with hatred and all of those things, it will not be good. It will be vile. It will be, it won't be.
That's all that line of surrender. Every single piece of it. The tithe is one piece. Forgiveness is another piece. Your heart is all tied to that surrender. And when you were talking before, Jonathan, I went straight to Hebrews 11, the faith in action chapter of the Bible. And it runs, and for everybody out there, read Hebrews 11:1. It is a simplistic breakdown of God's expectations in your life. Just faith. Everything is bound in faith in the one God that gave it all for us to live this life. The money you give freely from your heart, the time, the forgiveness, the heart condition, the darkness that feeds out, that you wipe away with light, all that stuff. I mean, Abraham laying his son on a table for God to take his life because he was willing to give it all to serve the one true God. And it's by faith. I mean, you go to Rahab, the prostitute that hid the people at the walls, because she knew they were for God and where they were working in the city when they were destroying the city and marching around those walls. I mean, just the faith and action in that chapter alone just puts it in the simplest of forms of it's a heart condition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Well, and I think, I mean, there's a reason why, the Bible talks about the power of your testimony as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let me tell you a story about this or this or that. And what that story does for you is build faith. Because it's like when people tell me something that God has done in their life, it builds faith in me because I know that God loves me as much as he loves that person. Right? And so it's like if God can and will do it for them, and not the exact same thing, but it's like whatever I've got going on in my life. And I'll call people sometimes and be like, tell them a story, tell them something God has done, tell them something I've experienced lately. It's like, hey man, I just wanted it to be a faith builder for whatever you've got going on, that God is willing, able and capable to take care of you.
And Abel.
Abel. Yep, Cain and Abel. No matter where you're at. And Abel. I was already on the next word, Jonathan. But even with that, I think there's like, man, there's so much to, yes, absolutely, surrender is a big part. It's like, do I give you all of me, or do I give you part of me, or I mean, and the same thing applies to your finances and your family. And because quite honestly, where money becomes an idol for people, your spouse, your job, your identity, your kids, all of those things, and they're all something that God has given you, or someone that God has given you, and we can put them on their own little pedestal, and they become little gods in our life where they matter more than anything else. And I'm not saying throw your kids out. It's like, I'm following Jesus, get away from me. But
Or do you?
Yeah, but it's like keeping him first in all of those things.
Right.
And he gives you amazing opportunities to show that and to share that. And I got to go to a lunch or a dinner the other day. Emily won a scholarship through my work. And it was like, I saw something, it came across my email, and I was like, Em is really good about filling these things out. And it's like, because she's fixing to graduate and grad school, and she wants to get her master's in Homeland Security. Yeah, that's where she's at. Nice. I'm like, my goodness. She's very smart. Anyway, I'm like, hey, check this out, because it applies to grad school and after your graduation, extended education, whatever they call it. I didn't graduate college. But so she fills it out. She comes back.
Postgraduate degree.
Yeah. Whatever. It's called after college.
He's able to do it.
I can discernible things. Anyway, so she comes back a little while later, and she's like, Dad, I got the scholarship. I'm like, wow, it's amazing. Sweet. More money for college, and great. That's awesome. And then I get an email, and it's like, hey, we're doing a dinner for the recipients of this thing or whatever, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay. Call him. It was yesterday, actually. And so get off work real quick, and we go over there, and I walk into this place, and it's like, I'm here for this company. we're meeting some people, and I look and I see my boss's boss at the end of the bar area, and a couple other people, and it ends up, it's like, okay, it's me and Emily and my boss's boss and like one of the head HR people, and then another like boss that's the same level as this guy, and then another boss that's the same level as this guy, and then another HR lady, and then a photographer lady. And I'm like,
The HR people scare me.
no, they're super cool. Like the ones we have, and both of these ladies are, I mean, super cool, super great. And that was one of the things that came up because when I got the job, I had to start as a trainee. And she was like, yeah, he was like one of the oldest trainees. But because I was making fun of it, because I was like, yeah, you like, we have to do like these Zoom calls as trainees, and everybody needs their camera on and all this stuff. And I'm looking, I'm like, okay, that kid can't grow a mustache. That kid can't grow a mustache. It's like, it's a bunch of 20-year-olds or whatever. And I'm looking going, I'm 44 years old, and I've been in construction longer than some of these people have been alive. Yeah, like for real. And, you know, they were kind of chuckling, and it's like, and it was crazy. I said, because I interviewed 3 times, and at the end of the 3rd interview, like, we love you. We don't have a job. And I'm like, why did you give me 3 interviews if you don't have a job? And so I'm telling them, I'm kind of retelling the whole story. And like I said, my boss is right here and all these other people. And the new HR lady goes, well, why did you take the job? Because it's to go in the training position, it's less money. You don't get all of the benefits. You don't get all of the stuff. And she's like, with the experience you said you have and all this stuff, why did you take the job? And my next comment was, from this point forward, what I tell you has to do with what I believe spiritually and my belief in God. And so this is your opportunity. If you don't want to hear that, I'll stop now.
Or stand up and walk away.
Yeah, because I'm here like with all of these kind of bigwig people. I was like, but I can't tell you my story further without God included in the rest of my story.
Right.
And she goes, no, please go ahead. I said, okay. I said, I took the job because God told me to take the job. She goes, really? I said, I asked. I said, God, you know that I, like, this isn't enough money. That you know that this, like, I'm looking, like, this is not enough money. And it was an exercise on faith. Mm-hmm. It was an exercise in hearing and trust and listening. Yeah. And like the girl sitting there looking at me, I said, and so what could have been anywhere from 6 days to 6 weeks was 6 months in a position where I knew I wasn't making enough money, or I was going further and further into the hole.
Yeah.
I said, and people are talking about promotions and all these things shaking. And like one HR lady, like I've known her since the very beginning. She was one of the, and she's like, she's nodding because she's the one that sent the original email when it came time to promotion, like at the end of this kind of thing. And I was like, you know, and I told him like straight out, it's like, I felt like God said he was going to do something for my job in January. And she goes, like, January this year. I'm like, this is all this year, like January. And I said, January 31st. Our work day ends at 5:30. January 31st at 3:30 in the afternoon, my boss walks up to my window with an email on his phone that says, Jason's been here X amount of days. What are we going to do? And I could see the email thread, and at the bottom said, promote him. And this, like I said, this girl's looking at me like, you gotta be kidding me. I said, so that's January 31st. I said, do you know when my official promotion date was? She goes, March 1st. So I got the word that God was going to move. I got the evidence that he had moved. And now I'm waiting on the physical manifestation of his word being true, which I know his word is always true. I said, but it took another entire month of faith and trust that what God had said in my life was true and I was in the right place.
Right.
And on March 1st, I got promoted. And so I kind of finished this whole story. And even like some of the other, like their eyes are all this big. And I'm like, that's why I'm here. Because this is where God told me to be. And it was just like, oh my goodness. And you could kind of like almost hear a pin drop. But it's an opportunity again to share in a moment of, I'm not here on accident and you're not either. What God has planned is bigger than what you could think or imagine. And if you're willing to say yes to whatever it looks like, when you know that it's him telling you, and then he can just do amazing things in the process.
So it's like you said, another person's testimony, and I fully believe that another person's testimony is second only to an actual encounter with God.
Mm-hmm.
Because the encounter with God is just, it's real. Like, there's no denying it. And you can hear stories, you can go to services, you can have amazing sermons preached to you. But when you have somebody that sits in front of you like you did at that dinner table, and their eyes are sitting there like that, there's nothing else that can grab somebody and let them know God is real.
Yeah, because most people can hear, they don't know what they're hearing.
Right.
Like
people, you brought that up earlier.
Yeah, people that are lost, or because the Bible says that nobody comes to him unless they're drawn, unless he draws them. And you know what the draw a lot of times is? Yeah. It's us.
Right.
And
it's us being better.
That's and
being different.
But that's where we talked about even last week is kingdom work. His kingdom come, his will be done. And again, it's that position of surrender when you're tithing. It's that position of surrender when you're thinking through it. And man, I can't tithe, God, because that's how I'm going to pay the bills this month. No, I asked you to give me that first, and I'll help you get through the bills. And if you get a little bit in the hole, I'll also dig you out. But you've been faithful to me. So by faith, just like Hebrews 11:1 says, I show you this. By faith, I do this. By faith, I get you here. And that's how we get through the valleys of our lives, is we're swimming through the valley because we know there's a mountaintop on the other side somehow, because God is always working for the good in us, even though the world could be working against us in the bad. And that's where bad things happen. Why does God let those happen? We brought this up today.
I don't even think it's a let.
Right.
It's because we have free will on a planet that is broken and riddled with sin,
right,
in a fallen world. Then that is the reaping. That's what you reap from sin.
Man, we could get really deep into this because you could actually think about it. God provided everything we need to live. We manufactured food. We manufacture medicine. We manufacture things. Those things cause sickness. Those things cause different things. Were they the original pieces of what God actually made that caused those things? I don't know. But people could go down that whole line of genetically modified, like different stories, different things that aren't.
I like those. Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
I think they have the best flavor.
They have. I mean, it's funny, though.
I'm going to be a superhero.
But people are like, well, God can control that. God can control that because he can control all things and anything. But here's the thing. We put our hands in it. And what's been the one true thing through every story and every scripture in the Bible is when we insert self into anything, the outcome is it hurts.
I think
there's a lesson.
Yeah, I think to a degree, because there is also the charge to subdue the earth.
Yeah.
To, like, we are supposed to do stuff, and I think, as much as
Healing.
people's
Like all the thing that comes from that. Yeah.
can come up with, bombs and instruments of destructions. There's, like, he's anointed people to be physicians and surgeons and medical type people. Are all of them great? No. But again, it's like anything else. We have, if God is leading us, and you have to go, okay, well, how many are not listening? And what are the consequences of their actions, right? Because at the end of it, it's not like, okay, I'm only coming back for Jeff. No, he's coming back for his church. He's coming back for a people. And that even, like we've talked about a little, it's like a collective people that are obeying and following and laying down their lives in different areas and stuff. But it's the same thing too, where he's like, I want to bless you. I want to give you that abundance and overflow. And some have turned it into a weird, it's prosperity gospel all its own, where it's all about making money and this and that. And it's like, yeah, it's stupid, because that's dumb. And does God want you to be successful? Absolutely, because God doesn't make failures.
You adjust your chain.
It's
But
funny. It is
yeah,
funny.
yeah, 'cause
It is funny you
I
mentioned
like
that,
platinum.
because this will seem like prosperity gospel, but there is, like, some books I was reading before I was even a believer. And remember, I don't read fiction. I read a lot of nonfiction, but
Oh, we remember.
yeah, The Secret was one
Leadership.
of the books. Leadership books. The Secret is one of the books I was reading, and it was mentioning the fact that people of faith are 60 or 70% more successful than anybody else. And this is people with religious backgrounds or something. And I don't know the exact statistics, so we're going to have to fact check that. And the book's The Secret. But there is a specific percentage of how much more successful those people are with faith or with religious backgrounds are than typical society. And not to throw prosperity gospel out at you, but it is a mind condition. It is knowing that you could get through a battle and not fall. Like, we don't see a problem as something that's going to completely wipe our lives out. And you see that in kids and raising them as parents, is sometimes they're like, how do I get past this? And you're like, well, let me teach you what God taught me. Right? And that's part of it, is like just always having a mindset that there's some kind of progression through it. And like we were saying, between products, between surgeries, between everything that could happen in our lives that is controlled by our hands, we still have the free will to accept that progression.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned something about the valley experience. I've just decided to get used to being in the valley. And here's why, and not like in a bad way, because
somebody commented on us once based on the valley, and they said, well, you're trying to make it seem like once you surrender your life, that life gets easier.
No. But at the same time, and this is what I've felt like over the years, that God has told me, showed me where I've ended up with mountaintops and valleys, right? Because everybody's like, oh, I'm trying to get to the mountaintop. Yeah, great. But
it's hard to breathe up there.
Thin air.
Listen, you're exactly where.
But you're painting the right picture. You are.
Nothing lives on top of the mountain.
All right. There's a dead zone. No trees.
Nothing
You don't
lives.
get cell service on top of the mountain. There's no social media on top
and
of the
so
mountain.
I'm like,
Amen.
I'm thinking about this process, right? And it's like, I'm just in a valley, and it's like, everybody lives in the valley.
Mm-hmm.
They live, one side, the other side, or in the middle. That's where you live. And God goes, you're right. You go to the top of the mountain to gain perspective
Right.
for what's coming next. You don't live there. because nothing grows there. Nothing
Prospers.
lives there. It is but you
It's a
can
short-term
but you can
fix.
see a long way. And what I've done over the years, and what I feel like he's kind of adapted and developed, is when I do feel like this is a mountaintop moment, I'm looking at the next mountaintop. There it is. I can see it. I know where I'm going. Like I have perspective, right, for kind of like the next venture in my life. And I know I'm about to go back into the valley, but that's where you spend most of your time. And it's like, I can be in the valley and be absolutely happy, absolutely fulfilled, absolutely like provided for all of those things, knowing that I'm headed in the direction from my last mountaintop experience where he gave me perspective. Okay, Jason, here's where you're going. And it's like, then the valley's not so bad because I know I'm going somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not just stuck, or I'm not trying to live on a mountaintop and choking myself to death with no provision, no shelter, no air, no anything, because I'm not meant to live there. I'm meant to see there and then continue to move. And so, yeah, absolutely. Those mountaintops, but the valley doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be the devil.
No,
No.
it's not.
Well, I mean, the valley is.
Down in the valley.
I mean, it's a reward.
So low.
Yeah, I don't sing. But the valley is, like you said, I mean, that's where we spend the majority of our time, and that's the reward is sometimes at that peak, going up to the peak. And when you were explaining that, it made me think of like when you go hunting, you know. So the valley is where you live, and then you set up a base camp. And whenever you go hunting, you set a base camp up, and you might be at 8,000, 9,000 feet with your base camp, and then you set up a satellite camp. And that satellite camp might be up past the tree line,
Where the TV's at.
where things don't grow. Not that kind of satellite. But that's where that reward is, right? And you only go up there for a short amount of time, and you don't bring everything with you up to that satellite camp. You drop back down to that base camp to replenish, to grab the water so that you can go spend a couple of more days up there trying to get your reward. And then when you're done with your reward, you come back down, clean up base camp, satellite camp, and you go back down to the valley and you share that reward with the family, because the family is in the valley, and you can't spend all that time up there. So I mean, it just painted a picture in my mind as you were explaining that. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Being in a valley is not a negative.
No.
As a matter of fact, I kind of enjoy being down there.
Well, yeah, and it's every time I feel like every time I've hit one of those mountaintop experiences, because I'm not limited to which direction I could look. Right. So I can look forward and see where I'm going, and I can look back and see where I've been. And know I can see that last mountaintop. Man, how from there to here, what was my journey? Where did I grow? Where did God speak? Where did he move? How did he change my path along the way?
And both create perspective. In ways.
I love. It has just been an amazing analogy for me. Going, you know, so many people are like, I'm just in the valley. Well, yeah, that's where we live.
But in that too, it's like, and this is just a note to any guy out there, is like, just celebrate where you're at. Doesn't matter how bad it is, because there's one thing that's not in the mountaintop is abundance, but in the valley there's a lot of people that surround you, and there are people that could lift you up and put that first step in front of you, or be that walking stick you need. And you just got to be looking for it. But that's the other thing.
I think celebrating wherever you're at is extremely important.
But God is trying to lead us in both. Is that a little bug?
Got it.
Yeah, I hunted them from up here on the mountain.
He was on the satellite. He
Dude,
brought
I
it.
Jeff, the
was
gathering-
thinking about that, and I went backpacking one time. I wish we had done the base camp format.
I'm the northern guy that changes the tires and does all the things.
Oh, so you weren't.
Oh
like
no,
that.
we did like a 4-day circuit, carrying in everything every day with no base camp, and it's like summit, valley, in like in a big circle. Oh, it was something.
We got to do a weekend journey hunting trip episode.
That's scary.
And we,
That's
guns?
Scary. Yeah, no, I still want to have.
we can
We're
just
gonna
do
have
it where
gun
we
day.
set up in
Gun
front of
day's
the
coming
feeder
up.
and watch the targets come
We
in.
will
I'm-
definitely have a gun.
I'm
day.
practicing rolling and shooting like lethal weapon.
barrel roll.
Yeah, barrel roll. I haven't seen him in any tactical shooting videos, but I think it's more
As long as I'm
advanced to
behind
be
your
able to
barrel
roll
while you're
and
rolling.
You
shoot.
can't. Yeah, you can't put those techniques out on
No,
YouTube.
they
They
are
have full metal
that from the
shields
80s.
put in
From
front
the
of us
80s
while he's
only.
rolling.
Listen, I know we started at money and we ended up at where your heart is, and
They fit.
if money inhabits the space of your heart where God said inhabit it, make some changes. If you feel like this just pushed you, like you don't agree, like you have, the church only wants my money. Listen, we are more than willing to entertain any questions to give you some more in-depth perspective, if that's what you feel like you would like. We are honored as always that you've chosen to spend your time with us. We don't take it for granted. Do us a favor, tell your friends about it. Tell your family about it. Tell other guys that your ride or dies. Let them know, hey, you need to check these knuckleheads out, because there's some extremely short shorts that show up. Maybe that's what we'll title this one: Short Shorts and
Have a
Money.
racquetball episode.
They're not that short. I mean, they are called shorts.
Yeah, but now we're glad that you're with us. Thanks for tuning in to Close Cover Podcast. For myself, John, and Jeff, the Podfather himself behind the camera and the master mic mixer, so I don't sound like a breathing water buffalo. We love you. Thanks. We're out.